Well, Iolo, nope. Try and spit your name out then. Well, Iolo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
How are you doing? How's it going with all this madness in the world at the moment?
Yeah, it's. I must admit, I found this latest lockdown much harder than the ones before. Maybe because it's been much of it's been over the winter and what have you. But I think it's because it's the third lockdown, and I must admit, we've been very careful out here. We're lucky to live in a rural area, so I've got my daily walks. But it's got to the point now where I know every new flower emerging by name, as in not Lesser Celandine or Primrose, but by Bob or Anthony or Martha, so that's how often I'm out walking.
It's when they start talking back to you, you need to worry, Iolo.
I tell you what, Jack, it's not far off now. It's not far off now. But I genuinely have had a gutful now. And obviously there's other people really seriously affected by this. I had it in March last year, oddly enough, and it was, to me, it affected me a little bit like mild flu for about 10 days. So, and I think if you're pretty fit, if you look after yourself, then you're sort of 99% likely that it'll hit you just as a mild illness. But of course, the danger is if you've got underlying problems, then it can be fatal, which is which has affected an awful lot of people. But yeah. But keeping happy, keeping cheerful, keeping my head up, and enjoying nature and wildlife.
And I'm glad you mentioned your kind of local area. So what's your local patch like? I know you probably don't want to broadcast exactly where you live, but you have women throwing their knickers at your front door. But what's it like, your local area?
Well, if they are going to throw knickers at me, I live in 4 Pantadur, Newtown, Powys, and the postcode is it's all right, Jack. It's good. I'm lucky because I live on the edge of a fairly small village in mid Wales, and within 5 miles we're meant to walk, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I've got the canal, so I go for a run, I go for walks along the canal. We've got the Severn River. So in November, December, I was able to watch salmon making their way over Newtown Weir, which is always a big attraction for me in winter. And then I've got woodland, I've got fields, farmland here. I know the local farmers very well, and they're good at allowing me to walk along some of the fields. So I'm lucky. I'm really lucky. And actually, the best thing I've seen over the last 12 months has been some of the country lanes we've got here. Walking along those, especially in spring when the first flowers, the lesser celandines, the wood anemones come through, and you get your first bumblebees, the queens are out, and then later on the bee flies and all the other insects. And it's that succession that I really enjoyed watching last year.
I think one of the things, particularly with this lockdown, is you do notice everything changing because I guess normally we'd be living our lives and we're traveling a lot, but like just so in my garden, for example, like I'm looking at my pond every day waiting for frog spawn, and I'm getting like a junkie. I'm shaking, waiting for it because I really want to see some frogs, and you just notice it at a very natural pace. Whereas normally, because I'd be busy, I probably wouldn't check for a few days, and then I'd find it. So I think we are kind of noticing things a lot more during this lockdown.
Yeah, and last spring, I think, was the first time since I was probably about 17, maybe even younger than that, that I actually had time on my local patch to go out and do what I used to do when I was a kid. Yeah, I've always loved bird nesting. I never, ever collected eggs, no interest. But I love when you pit your wits against the birds, and you find birds' nests. I mean, blackbirds are song thrushes. I'm lucky to still have those here, chaffinches, goldfinches, a lot of dunnocks here, long-tailed tits, a lot of those, really good population of those, found a few bullfinch nests, but always the most difficult one is the robin. And there was one singing away down the road here, and I thought, right, okay, I'll get you in spring. And I went down there and I saw it up on the telegraph wire with a beak full of leaves. And it's sort of the base of the nest is usually a pile of dried leaves. Then it adds moss onto this. And I thought, right, okay. But of course, the robin saw me. Immediately, it opened its beak, dropped all the leaves, and began to sing, as if he was saying, "Oh no, I'm not building a nest. I'm just having a sing song." And it took me 3 or 4 more attempts to sneak down, hide in a hedge, stick my head out before I was able to watch exactly where it went. They're sly little so-and-sos, and they're very good at hiding their nest as well. But yeah, that was a joy. That was an absolute joy.
Give them a bit more credit for intelligence than we think, I suppose, when they're doing stuff like that. We were going to do this podcast in Scotland originally, weren't we? We were going to have a whiskey in the Grant Arms, which is somewhere we've both been quite a few times, and it made me think a little bit about the UK as a whole as a wildlife destination, because Scotland tends to be up there as like that's the place to go to see wildlife, and England's got little patches, but I don't know how many people from Europe would travel specifically to England, but it made me think about Wales as well, because there are lots of animals in Wales that are also in Scotland. We think about pine martens, you've got them in Wales, and red squirrels and black grouse. But do you think Wales is maybe overshadowed a little bit by some of the wildlife in Scotland, or is it just a case it's a hidden gem?
I'm not quite sure how much of a hidden gem it is, really. I always think I love Scotland, I really do, but I always think it's like Wales, only stretched out and pushed up a lot more.
Okay.
And you've got a really nice sort of wild areas up there where you can lose yourself for a long weekend, even a week in one or two areas as well, right over on the west coast there. Wales has got these fairly wildish areas, nothing like they've got up there. And of course, what I love about Wales is that in 2 hours, I can leave the top of a mountain with its ravens and its peregrine falcons and its ring ouzels and its Arctic alpine plants and its golden ringed dragonflies in the streams as I walk down, then through farmland, through coniferous forest with its goshawks, with its red squirrels in one or two areas still. Then I can come into deciduous woodland with its plethora of lichens and mosses, with pipe flycatchers and red starts. Then I can go through lowland farmland where we've still got the odd curlew, not many I know, the hedgerows, down along the riverside with its kingfishers and goosanders and things like salmon, sea trout. We've still got some, even though it's not nowhere near what it was 40 odd years ago, to an estuary, to a sand dune system, and out to the sea. And you can do all that in Wales in 2 hours, and that's pretty unique worldwide, I think. So when you've got all those habitats close together, it means that in a day you can see an awful lot of wildlife. Whereas in places like Scotland, usually you've got to travel a long way to do all of that, and it'll probably take a long weekend for you. So I think it's about marketing Wales properly. I think we can't compete. We haven't got, unfortunately, white-tailed eagles and golden eagles and things like wildcats, Scottish wildcat and what have you. But we've got some incredible wildlife, but you've got to know where to look for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really looked at it like that in terms of it all being condensed down, because the nice thing with Wales is as well, for a lot of people, it's quite accessible. Like whether you live in Wales to another part of Wales or on the border in England. I mean, I'm in Nottinghamshire, and I think to North Wales, it's just over 2 hours maybe, which isn't bad. Whereas if I want to get to the Cairngorms, it's a right fucking slog. It's like 7 hours or something. Jesus. So, and North Wales, I mean, I'm guilty that I've not done a lot in Wales, but I did a little bit for Natural Resource Wales, which I know you've got mixed opinions on, is probably the polite way to put it. But I did a little bit of work with them on salmon on the Dee, and it was beautiful. Absolutely loved it. It was phenomenal. And I thought, this is a lot closer than Scotland. I should get on these Welsh salmon a little bit more. So
well, if you're over again, Jack, let me know, because I dive. I've dived for many years now, and one of the things I've been meaning to get into for a long time is actually diving, snorkeling, whatever it is, in Welsh rivers, looking at fish. I got a couple of mates who do it, both of them big fishermen. One's a really good artist as well, and they go and they'll film suing, sea trout, salmon as they come up the river. So it's fascinating. I've always maintained I'd love to have a go at that and do a lot more of that in future. But it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because I come from mid Wales, and there are one or two areas in mid Wales here that I absolutely love. It's my go-to place to see stuff like hen harriers, merlin, black grouse, short-eared owls. But I'm not willing to advertise where it is because I want to keep it with hardly anybody there. But then the local people, they want people to come to maintain the cafes and the hotels and the local buses and everything else. So it's a balancing act, and it's a difficult one, marrying those two things together.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I guess with some of the nature spots where there's lots of people, I guess more eyes is good to keep an eye on anything going dodgy, but then you risk disturbance. So yeah, it's there's pros and cons to all of it, I guess, with that, isn't there? Is that David Miller by any chance, your artist friend?
Yeah, he's one. Yeah, he's a good, very good artist, David. Very good artist. You know, as a kid, I grew up in Llanwddyn, Lake Vyrnwy. People know it as the River Vyrnwy. Salmon couldn't get up there because there's a big old dam across the river by Dolanog, about 8 miles downriver. But we had brown trout, we had eels. You know, so I used to do a lot of fishing as a kid. A lot of fishing. I haven't done it 40, no, not quite 35 years. And that's one of the things I'd love to get back into, actually, because it's really very relaxing when you're fishing a river and you're watching the dippers and the kingfishers. Used to be waterfalls going by, you know. So I know a lot of people are anti-fishing. I'm not at all. I think fishermen do an awful lot of good to a lot of our rivers. You know, they are the campaigners campaigning for cleaner waters, because a lot of our waters are polluted now because of agricultural runoff mainly. And they are campaigning really, really hard. Unfortunately, not getting anywhere, partly because of Natural Resources Wales, which, as you said, there's some good people working for it, but at the highest level, I've got no respect for them whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, you know, obviously I've got my love of fish, so I do a little bit of fishing every now and again. But it's nice to leave the camera at home, and I treat that as my sort of relaxing kind of getaway, which is, I guess it's a similar vein. You're still outdoors, but I don't treat that as a job. So I go every now and again, which is always nice. But yeah, I'll definitely take you up on that. I'd love to go snorkeling or diving I've done it a couple of times with David. We did puffins off Skomer, and we've done I can't remember what river it was, but we did go looking for Suin in a river in Monmouthshire, I think it was. But I didn't see it. David saw some, I didn't see any. But yeah, we'll have to do that. That'd be good.
Yeah, cool.
And I wondered, is there a species for you that encapsulates whales? I mean, obviously, if you say Scotland, people would probably lean towards an eagle or a golden eagle. England, God knows what you'd sum England up with. I mean, I don't know, depends which part of the country it is. But is there a species that you'd say encapsulates Wales?
Yeah, I think it would have to be the red kite, wouldn't it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I know now the red kite is found over much of the UK, as it was historically, of course. But for a long time, from the 1890s right through to 1989, it was found only in Wales, and it was down to just literally a handful of breeding pairs. And thanks to long-term protection, thanks to a lot of landowners as well, they played a key role. Numbers increased slowly. Then 1989, they took measures to reintroduce birds from Sweden into Scotland, from Spain into England. And then things began to take off, really began to take off, especially in places like Oxfordshire, you know, where you can see, you know, several dozen, if not over 100 in the air at once there now. And oddly enough, once the Welsh birds moved down into the more fertile valleys, things really took off here. And it's only through research that we found that actually kites don't like Wales at all. It's too cold, it's too wet, there's not much food here in the Welsh uplands, where they retreated because of persecution, really. And it's only when they got to the more fertile areas that our pairs began to rear 2 and 3 young, which was unheard of up in hills. You know, you were lucky if a pair reared 1 young. And I remember when I first, because I worked for the RSPB for 15 years, I remember when I first joined in the early 80s, we used to spend so much time guarding the few kite nests left, and we'd lose anything up to 25% of our pairs to egg thieves every year. Wow. And some of the tails, you know, at that time, my job, I was out and about a lot, but I was also coordinating a lot of the work. And we had people in Mid Wales, we had sort of gangs of, well, almost like local ruffians, you know. If they caught an egger, I honestly, I wouldn't like to think what they'd do to him. And it was always a him. I mean, I know of several incidents where they put a knife in the car tire so that the egger couldn't drive away and phone the police. You know, the police arrived, and they, of course, mysteriously disappeared. And it was bandit country back then. It was exciting. And of course, as an RSPB worker, I couldn't condone that, even though inside I was thinking, bloody well done, boys. That's what's needed. but honestly, it was it was. I say it was great fun in a way. It was, but it was heartbreaking as well because you weren't sure whether we were able to hold on to this pitifully small population of red kites, about 40 pairs, I think we would have had then. And when you're losing 10, 12 pairs a year of those to these eggers, I must admit that I sympathise with these lads, because if I would have caught an egger by myself in a wood, I can't promise that that egger wouldn't have been buried somewhere under the leaves, so.
Yeah, no, and I just I mean I was going to come on to it later, but I might as well bring it up now because we've mentioned it. But like, does egg collecting still go on now? Because it seems such a Victorian weird thing for people to do. But I don't know if
yes, it does. Yeah,
really?
it goes on, not to the extent that it did. I remember when I was working for the RSPB, I think on their computer they had the names of something like 500 active eggers. Now most of those were small time. They'd been done once for nicking a clutch of robin or blackbird eggs or whatever,
Right.
but some of them were real big time. You're talking about thousands, if not tens of thousands of eggs. I had a couple of egg collections being confiscated. One had, I think it was 11,000 eggs in it, and another one had even more. Yeah, it's an obsession, and what people don't understand is there's no financial value in it at all. They don't steal the eggs to sell them on. They steal them for their own gratification. And you can't brag about it to your mates. Hey, come and have a look at my eggs, because then someone will get to know about it. The police will come round and you get done. So what they do, they used to keep them in attics or in garages and what have you. Now they've usually got a sort of safe place well away from their homes where they'll keep the eggs. And they, I assume, from time to time will go in and sort of fondle the eggs and get some kind of sexual gratification from it. Honestly, genuinely, it's a weird obsession. Nowhere near as many people do it now, because there have been several changes in the law. The fine, I remember my early days, the fine was pitiful. If you were caught, you had a £40 fine, slap on the hand saying naughty boy, which was no deterrent. Then it went up to, I think it was a few £1,000s per egg, whatever it is, for a Schedule 1, a very rare bird. And then came the law whereby the police could confiscate anything that was used in that crime. So you could confiscate their car, keep their car, their binoculars, their ropes, their maps, their books. And also then it became custodial. You had the option of a custodial sentence. And that was what did for a lot of them, I think. Once they thought, hang on, now I can be banged up for 6 months here. That was when I think quite a few of them gave up then. But up until that point, they were very active. They were out in all weather. They were out from, in Wales, the early ones would be out in February, taking raven eggs and then eyeing up where the red kites were displaying, thinking, okay, there's going to be a nest. I'll be back in a month and a half. I'll get those. And all the way through, they'd come maybe for merlins, maybe peregrines. They'd come back for the last ones. The last visit to Wales would probably be early to mid-June for things like nesting roseate terns. And then they'd also go up to Scotland, after eagles, of course, early on. Later on, it'd be after the divers. And you should see the diaries of some of these. They work out where they're going to go every single weekend, every holiday they had throughout spring, right into summer. It's, as I say, it's an obsession. And they came from all kinds of backgrounds as well. Couple, I think, were serving police officers until they were caught, and then they were thrown out of the force.
Wow.
One, I remember one very prominent one was a steel worker, one was a solicitor. A lot of them were unemployed, but all kinds of backgrounds, And if people were to vote for me as a dictator tomorrow, one of the first things I would do is I would make it illegal to hang egg thieves, because between February and June every year, I went so many weekends without hardly any sleep, sleeping rough, and all this. I can't stand them. I have no time for them whatsoever. None whatsoever.
Well, when you get to power, Iolo, I think you'll get a few votes in there. But that's just, it's. Imagine them being in with some murderer or something like, "What are you in for? I ate my family. What about you? Oh well, I've collected an egg." It's just crazy, absolutely crazy. On a slight side note, there was a series on Welsh wildlife a couple of years ago. I think it was Land Land of Wales, or something like Wildlife Land of the Wales. I don't know if you had anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Michael Sheen narrated it. Do you remember
Yes,
that series?
that's right. Yeah, it was done by a company called Plimsoll.
That's it.
They kind of used me as a consultant. In other words, I went
Okay.
in early, gave them a few ideas, a few stories, and some of it was excellent. They had some stunning footage, I think, of a dipper nesting behind a waterfall and one or two other things.
Yeah.
It was nice. I think it probably helped put Wales and Welsh wildlife on the map a little bit, I think.
It was, yeah, because I did a little bit for that series on. So me and David did puffins for it, but they were asking me for fishy ideas, and they said, "Have you got anything that'd be good for that?" And I said, "Well, what are you come up with already?" And said, "Oh, we're thinking about doing salmon." And I said, "You can't do salmon. You've got to do suin. You've got to do sea trout. They are the pinnacle of Welsh fish. They should be on a Welsh banknote, really." And they didn't do it in the end, which kind of grated me a little bit, because I was like, when I think of a map of the UK, salmon for Scotland, I suppose, but for Wales, it's got to be the sea trout. But they didn't do it in the end. So that's the one that I always think of Welsh wildlife, and I've never seen one, but the other one is a gwynniad. Have you heard of that one?
Gwynniad, yeah,
Gwynniad,
yeah, in Llyn Tegid there, Bala Lake.
That's it.
I've seen a dead one.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah, it stank of cucumber, if I remember rightly. It's got a weird cucumbery smell to it.
Yeah.
And they spawn. Is it in early Feb or something like that?
Yeah.
Late Jan, early Feb.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
I remember going there and seeing some of the eggs have been washed ashore, onto the edges there.
Okay.
But I've only ever seen one dead. And of course, the other one is, although it's not a Welsh one, is Torgoch, what we call the Arctic char.
Okay.
Some of the lakes up in North Wales. They're beautiful fish. I've seen those, and they are absolutely stunning fish. But of course, there are far more in Scotland and the north of England. And actually, one of the most remarkable things that I've learnt in the last couple of years, and it was on Winter Watch a couple of years ago, is about how some of these trout in some of the big lochs up in Scotland almost fill different niches, don't they?
They do, yeah.
And over time will probably become different species, I would imagine, over time.
Well,
but
it
was an amazing tale. Amazing tale.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because like the whole with in Wales, a gwynniad, you call them gwynniad. In Scotland, it's a poen, and in England, we call them a skelly. So it's so funny how each one's got a very kind of country-sounding name. But some would argue they're different species. Some would argue they're the same. But the same thing's happening with trout now, where they ferox trout, which are these big cannibal trout. Yeah. You've got trout that feed more near the surface. So over time, maybe they will develop into different species. Who knows? You're known, I guess, mostly as a general naturalist. I suppose leaning towards birds a little bit more. But I wondered if there was a species that stands out for you. Is there one that particularly captures your interest?
Yeah, there's a whole host of them, really.
Yeah.
I'll answer that in two parts, if I may. First of all, it's the ones that I've seen, the ones that I work on a lot, and it's the one that takes up most of my time, I suppose, is the hen harrier, and it's not because it's become in vogue now to champion hen harriers. I found my first hen harrier nest in 1973. And how old was I? I was 10 years old, nearly 11 years old then. And I've been going up onto the same moorland area, vast area of moor ever since, and work on them every year with a good mate of mine called Keith Offord. Keith does 99% of the work. And when I have days off, I'll phone him and say, hey, any chance I can come up on the hill with you? And he and we've been working those moors for getting on for 45, 46 years now, 47 years, whatever it is. And it's my go-to place, if in spring and summer, as you know, things get hectic, and I think I'm going to have a day off week after next, and I'm going to go up on the moors. I just spend all day up on the moors, either with Keith or by myself, a couple of butties, bit of cake, flask of tea, and just pin down harrier nests, monitor them. Not as many merlins up there now. Whatever else we can find, there's all kinds of stuff there. Well, botanically, there's some interesting stuff up there as well. And so, but it's the hen harrier that drags me up there more than anything else. But there's a whole host of things. Last year or the year before? There's a wonderful husband and wife farmers, Brian and Socia Lewis, in the Elan Valley, a little bit further south in mid Wales. And I went out with saucer with some pheromone lures to film the Welsh clearwing moth. It's a pretty scarce moth. It's not uniquely Welsh. They found it in Cumbria, parts of southern Scotland. I think Cannock Chase as well, on old birch trees. These really old birch. They burrow in there. They pupate there, and then they emerge. And you hang up pheromones in early June, then likelihood is you'll get an adult coming. And that was a joy, because I hadn't seen them since I was about 15. So that was the first time, for me to see them for a very, very long time. And the other thing that I've got, I'm starting to build up now. I'm getting older. I'm 58 now. I'm getting older. And you're very aware of your own mortality. I've never been afraid of death. It doesn't worry me one bit, not one, because I've had a lovely life, really nice life. But I've got like a bucket list of things that I really want to do and want to see in the UK mainly. And that includes things that I've never seen, because I've never made the effort. Stag beetles, never seen them.
Yeah, same. I'd love to.
Yeah, me too. Cracking huge beetle, and apparently parts of West London, Richmond Park at the right time of year. They're everywhere. They're bloody everywhere, and I haven't seen one yet. Searle buntings, I've seen them abroad. I've never popped down to Devon to see them, so I'm going to want to see those. There's a reserve near Oxford, like a sort of wet meadow reserve that at the right time of year is full of snake's head fritillaries, wild ones. I really want to go and see those. I want to go snorkeling, stroke diving to see things like seawin. So I've got this list that I built up. The big one that I'd love to do is get in the water with orcas.
In Shetland.
I'd love to do that. And I've got
you wouldn't be nervous?
No, not at all, because they're hyper intelligent. There's never been an attack on people except in captivity. Which you'd expect. If you're going to stick an amazing, intelligent mammal like that in a small swimming pool, well, you deserve everything you get, because that is incredibly cruel. So so I'm building up this bucket list, and as I get every year older, I'm thinking, oh bloody hell, come on, y'all, you've got to get on with this bucket list now, man, just in case. Because the amount of cake I eat, it'll probably be a heart attack that gets me in the end of it.
Just got a wedge of lemon drizzle in one hand and a smile on your back.
I tell you what, I'd go, as long as I can tick off some of these bucket list things, I'd go a happy man then. I'd go a happy man.
Oh, don't blame me. I'm partial to any cake that's going, really. Many of you, or many people, will know you from the Watchers, and I wondered, how did you go from an RSPB officer to being a mainstay on the Watchers?
By accident. I won't go into detail into how I went into telly in the first place. I've told this story many a time.
Yeah.
Basically, it was my time at the RSPB was obviously coming to an end, because they were trying to curtail my field work. They were trying to say, you've got to go into middle management, give up a lot of the field work, and I just wasn't willing to do that at all, really. I was quite happy staying on a much lower wage, managing a small team in the field, but getting out into the field a lot myself as well. That's my passion, really, because I'm a naturalist. I'm not a TV presenter at all. And then, because I had to deal with various TV companies and news over the years, dealing with poisoning incidents, dealing with illegal shooting, the Sea Empress, that was a big one when the oil tanker went down 25 years ago now, 1996, off Pembrokeshire coast. I had to deal with the media and deal with the birds there. That Welsh telly, BBC Wales and S4C came and said, listen, we've heard you're leaving. Do you fancy doing some wildlife stuff for us? And my answer was no, because I found telly to be a pain in the ass. They really are, aren't they? Can you just do that another 4 times?
Yeah.
And you think, what do you mean another 4 times? I've walked down the hill once for crying out, like, didn't you bloody film it or what? So, but then there wasn't much work around. I just got married, and money for the first time in my life was quite important. And in the end, I phoned them back and said, let's give it a go. And that was 22 years ago. And the Watches is a different story. I've got a sort of up and down relationship with BBC Bristol over the years. I was asked, I won't name anyone, but I was asked many, many years ago. I went down there for a meeting, and a lady said to me, looked at me after I'd spoken for about 5 minutes and said, now then, Iolo, could you possibly do something about your accent, do you think? You know, bear in mind, this was 1999. So that didn't please me at all. So I got up, I said, thanks for the meeting, and walked out and thought, bugger that, I'm not going to work with that lot. And then there was another incident a few years later on as well, where I was shafted again, really. Took an idea down there, they didn't want it. So I went to BBC Wales, they wanted it, just to find that the BBC Bristol had taken the idea, run with it, and they had a big series, and they told us our series has to come up before yours, you know. So that didn't please me at all. And I thought, right, okay, that's it, no more. And I just finished filming a series for S4C, for Welsh telly, in North America, USA and Canada, on Native Americans. I've always been fascinated by them. Whenever we were kids and you had a game of cowboys and Indians, all my mates wanted to be cowboys. I wanted to be an Indian. I wanted to live in the woods with a bow and arrow and what have you, you know. So I've always been fascinated by them. So we went out, and I kind of lived with 6 different tribes, 4 in USA, 2 in Canada, for 2 weeks, and got to know the people. Saw how they were suffering. Their language had been wiped out. I was on the verge of being wiped out. They were eating all the wrong foods, or they were diabetic, they were alcoholic, they were drug addicts. It was a traumatic series. It was a really difficult one to film. And I just finished with the last of the tribes in Canada. I think it was the Mi'kmaq. And I'd gone out, on the piss, basically, with a couple of French Canadians in Toronto, I think we were. And they were a hoot, you know. And I got in at about 4 in the morning, and much the worse for wear. And the phone went at 6 a.m. And I thought, who the bloody hell is giving me a bell now? So I looked at my phone and it said, Chris Packham. And I thought, what the hell does he want now? So I answered the phone, rough as hell, you know. I said, listen, Chris, I've got to apologize. I said, I just over here been filming, and much the worse for wear. And he said, no, that's fine. And he was asking me, I think Bill Oddie had gone, Kate was still there. Bill Oddie had gone, and Simon King had just left the Watches, and they were trying 3 or 4 people. There was a lad from Northern Ireland, can't remember who else was. Liz Bonin, I think, was one of them. And then they asked me, he asked me, he wanted me on there. Do you fancy coming on the Watches? And so he's the one. It's down to him that I'm on there, really. And he's a good lad. He's an interesting character, Chris, because I've known him. I was trying to work this out the other day. I've known him more than 25 years now, but I still don't know him well.
No.
He's very, very private, but incredibly supportive, And I'm full of admiration for the way that he manages to pack everything into his life, you know, the campaigning. He still gets out and about and does a bit of wildlife watching and what have you, a lot of filming. Of course, he's a busy man, and he's got the most incredible brain, the most orderly brain of anyone I've ever met. So I'm on there thanks to him.
Well, I suppose people don't realise as well, because I mean, I've done the bits and bobs for the Watches over the years, but that's obviously your work. And when things were back to normal and you were able to mix somewhat, it's your job. It's not fun and games. You're all working, aren't you? And the presenters, presumably, I mean, you do get to see each other a bit, but you're at work, aren't you? You've got to learn your lines and whatever. It's not like you're all kicking back with a bottle of champagne or whatever, pissing yourselves laughing. You've got to crack on and do it. So I guess there's not that much time to get into the nitty gritty of everyone's lives. You're there.
No, you don't really. I mean, it is a joy, and it genuinely is a joy. It's a fantastic team. It's roughly probably about 120 people. You know, okay, we're all working separately now because we have to. But when we were all together, it's about 120 people. And I've never worked in an environment like that where everybody is rooting for you. You're just that sharp end. It's just your face they see. But behind that, there's all these people, riggers, lighting, sounders, camera people, directors, producers, researchers, all of these people doing genuinely a fantastic job, and it's a lovely feeling. But you are right, it's hard work, it's long hours. I mean, you'll start. I like to start at 7 a.m. ish, 7 to 8, where you look at the running order for that day. You don't have a script as such. You just have a running order. You know what you're dealing with. You know who comes before you. You then see who you've got to link into afterwards, or it might be somebody's film, might be one of your films, the bait ball film, for example, which is fantastic. And then we'll go into a meeting at about 9, and then we'll go over everything, make sure it's factually correct, make sure that people are happy with what's on there. And then Susie will say, well, actually, it's too long. We need to lose about 4 minutes here. So then we've got to go back through it all, and say, oh, well, I can lose a bit there. That can go, that's not essential, that bit there. So there's all of that. Then we as presenters go off and we write those little cue cards that you see, where all I do is put the little prompts. I try and get it in my head, what I'm doing, who I'm coming from, what my first point is, what I need to go into. I've then got a chart I've got to show, showing the life cycle of a salmon, whatever it is, So I've got little bullet points. That's what I have. Then we have what they call a block just after lunch, which is where we run through everything to make sure that if I've got to get from the river to a wood, and I've only got 4 minutes because there's a 4-minute film between that, is that feasible? So we run through the block. Then we go away again. We watch all the films that are going to go out that night to make sure that if we are linking into it or out of it, we know what we've watched, and also actually making sure that it's all factually correct as well. And then we'll have a rehearsal, a full rehearsal, where we do it as if it's live, and we run through that. At the end of that, of course, we'll then have a meeting to say, well, actually, Iolo, you rambled on a bit too much about the about the salmon pan and the salmon fry. Can you make that much more succinct there? And you forgot to mention orcas out at sea and this kind of stuff. And then, of course, we'll have our evening meal, and then we'll have one last look at our cards, and then we go live. And the live finishes at 9. By the time you've de-mic'd and everything else, it's about 15, 30. And then you get the running order for the next day. And I like to have a look at that the night before. So you get to bed about 11 o'clock. There's usually, if we're all together, I make sure there's time for a pint in the evening, just to have, if it's half an hour's unwind, it's nice to sit down. Invariably, you'll be with Michaela, Gillian maybe, just have an unwind, bit of a chin wag. Michaela's amazing. She goes and watches the whole program again to see what she thinks was good and what didn't work. And she looks at her own performance and thinks, actually, do you know what? I rambled on a bit too much there, or I could have padded that out a little bit and what have you. She's fantastic. I don't. Once it's gone out live, that's it. I hate watching myself. So I think that's it. It's done. I can't change anything there. I mean, obviously, if I've made a real hash, you think, oh my God, right, okay, I need to think about that or what have you. But so they are long days, and exactly what you say, you don't really have time to catch up with people. And weekends, if you're away, invariably weekends is when you film stuff for the next week, or you might be doing voiceovers for a film. It might be your bait ball film, and they might say, okay, Iolo, we want you to do the voiceover for this. So you've got all of that as well. So you don't have time to have a proper chin wag, a proper catch up. And I'm not sure I've ever sat down with Chris and had a proper chin wag with him, to be honest with you. I don't think I have, in 25 odd years. I don't think I have.
That's so peculiar, isn't it, when you think about that? It's weird, because by a weird quirk of fate, you nearly worked on that bait ball film with me a couple of years ago, because I don't know if you know the full story, but I've been pitching that to the watchers for like 4 or 5 years. Every year it's like, come on, get it on. And for whatever reason, that either the fish didn't turn up, the weather wasn't right. I think one year you weren't available because they were going to have you come down, but then the week after they buggered off. So that didn't happen that year. So I'm not going to blame you too much, because we got there in the end anyway. But
that's such a shame, Jack, because there are a few things. I've got a real sort of highlights from the watches. I've been involved now, oddly enough, for I think it's 11 or 12 years now, from when I did my first thing. And the first thing was on Sewin in West Wales, believe it or not. with a fantastic old bailiff. He retired a couple of years after. He's still around now. A man called Emyr Lewis. And Emyr knows those West Wales rivers, well, mid-West Wales rivers, better than anyone else I know. He's a fabulous bloke. But some of the highlights, seeing orcas for the first time ever in my life off Caithness. The other one was pike at Stony Cove.
I have seen that film. Yeah, that was good.
Oh, do you know what? I love doing that. It's when the temperature reaches 9 degrees, I think it is, and the territories break down, and you know all this, but the big females go wandering looking for a partner. You know, we had this massive female. She would have been about, I don't know, 15, 16 pounds with 4 or 5 males following her. And you know, they got no fear of man then. They come right past you. And that was another real highlight for me as well. So there's lots of stuff that I'd still like to do, but you know, I've been really lucky doing some really cool stuff for them.
Yeah, they're a good bunch of people. It was they didn't mention it in the program, but we shot that the day after my wedding. So I got married the day before, and I was so keen to get that on because I thought if we don't do it this year, then they're just going to ignore me. So I thought So I got married the day before. Josh Jaggard, who you know, he was my best man. So
he's a good lad, Josh.
He is. He's all right, isn't he? So we had a drink or two anyway. So the next day, I mean, I don't think they did any close-ups, but I would have been looking a bit worse for wear. And so I think some of the camera work was a bit shaky from Josh. So I thought, oh God, we're never going to get away with this. But somehow they turned it into quite a decent film, I thought. But
it was good. I have to ask, have you married a fish or not?
A mermaid I've married.
Best of both worlds, Jack.
Yeah,
best of both worlds.
Yeah, women legs on the bottom and fish on the top. I thought I'll get my priorities straight. So you're obviously known for kind of speaking out for a lot of things as well. I wondered, do you think it's important to speak out? Because there's so many injustices happening in the natural world, and it is easy to just kind of keep to the status quo, and there are some, without naming any names, there are some presenters who maybe have influence and they don't say as much. They just kind of keep the ball rolling. Whereas, and you mentioned Chris, who is completely opposite, who he goes full in and campaigns. Do you think that's something, if someone has got a sphere of influence, that they should use that for good, really?
Yeah, I feel very strongly about this. There's two things I feel strongly about. I think if you're going to be on telly presenting about wildlife, you need to know your stuff. And not everybody does. You know, I could name the really good naturalists on two hands, really. But I do think, you know, you need to be a good naturalist, not somebody with a zoology degree. It does work if you're a decent scientist as well. You know, there are people on there who are really good sort of scientists and can explain the science well. I think that's important too. But I think you've got to be a naturalist. And the second one is I feel strongly that you've got to use your position to give a voice to all the creatures out there, all the habitats that don't have a voice. They simply don't have a voice. You know, unless you speak up for them, then they're going to disappear. And you know, the best one by a long mile, without a shadow of a doubt, is Chris. You know, he's brilliant, and I know he's either loved or hated. I've got so much admiration for him. I campaign as much as I can in Wales here. I try and lobby Welsh Government. I try and lobby Natural Resources Wales, in nearly all cases unsuccessfully, I have to be honest. I detest social media. I really do. I think it gives a voice to the idiots out there, but it does have its uses, and campaigning is one of them. And I try and campaign for things that I feel strongly about. You know, you'll see that I'm absent from some campaigns where you might expect me to be there. It's because of my background, very much a countryman, if you like. I don't feel strongly enough to be at the forefront of some of those campaigns. Anywhere where there's habitat loss, habitat destruction, illegal bird of prey persecution, pheasants is a big thing for me now. You know, I think it's madness to release 60 million pheasants into the UK countryside. I genuinely think that is madness.
Isn't that something like our total bird mass? I don't know the exact, something like 40% of something's all pheasants in the UK, or something crazy like that.
It's biomass. Pheasants make up over half of our bird biomass now.
Jesus
so if
Christ,
you were to kill every single bird we have and weigh them, pheasants would be over half of that pile. So and it's madness. It's not a native bird. It's a non-native bird, and it shouldn't be here. Now, I'm not anti-shooting. This is one of the things I get a lot of shit for from some environmentalists. But I grew up in mid Wales. Between us, some of the kids in the village, I don't know where it came from. We had a small gun, a 410, which is like a little 12 bore. I used to go out. I would shoot rabbits mainly, and what I shot, we ate. And bear in mind, I grew up in the late 60s through the 70s when meat was quite an expensive commodity. So if I shot a rabbit, or if I caught a decent sized brown sort of trout, it was a meal for 6 of us. So that's why I'm not anti-shooting. I'm very anti all this jumping on horseback, red coats going after foxes. I detest all of that. I'm very anti mass farming and releasing of pheasants. I'm very, very anti that. Anything illegal persecution, illegal snaring, actually snares I don't like, really don't like at all. So so I will campaign for stuff that I feel strongly about.
Yeah, no, and I think it's good to kind of stand up for what you believe in. And I also think you're right in saying you should know what you're saying, practice what you preach, sort of thing, in terms of that. I think it's good if you can get the balance, having that knowledge, but at the same time also being a half decent presenter and kind of condensing what you know and putting it into a kind of form where people can absorb that and get a little bit more knowledge from it, hopefully. So,
do you know what's weird, Jack? What I still find weird, I've been doing this for 22 years. I still hate watching myself. Okay. I really do. I will watch myself, but only when I'm by myself. I've recorded every single winter watch and I've watched them back, and I've thought, I could have speeded that up a bit. I could have said that in a different way. I'm hypercritical of my own performance, really. And why people want to watch me on telly, I genuinely do not understand.
No, me
because
neither,
I wouldn't. It's true, Jack. Honestly, I wouldn't watch me. I genuinely wouldn't watch me. And I think, bloody, you've been at this 22 years. You've got no better. What are you doing? And it's a funny thing, but I know some people love watching themselves. They love it. I absolutely hate it. Absolutely hate
if you've been
it.
doing
I love what I do. I love what I do. I love what I do because I love wildlife. I'm so passionate about stuff, and I'm so glad that we're now concentrating on UK wildlife, not just for the watches, but elsewhere as well, because I think it's so important for people out there to learn about what's around them, to appreciate it. They'll then hopefully campaign to look after it. But watching myself on telly, if you wanted to torture me to get information out of me, no need to get the SS in. Just play, my bits on Winter Watch, my bits on BBC Wales from the year dot. And I would, honestly, I tell you everything you wanted to know within 4 to 5 hours. I really would.
Well, if you've been doing it 20 odd years and they're still allowing you on the telly, Iolo, you must be doing something right. So I know, and it's probably good. It'd be a little bit more worrying, to be honest, if you were here saying, I fucking love watching myself. There's nothing better than putting the telly on and seeing my face. So I think it's probably better that you're on that side of the fence, if I'm honest with you. Well, look, this is bringing me towards the end of it. So I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to come on. And I'm sure at some point we will get a whiskey in the Grant Arms together. Yeah,
hopefully, Jack. And don't forget, genuine now, when you're over in Wales again, let me know. And if I can, I'd love to tag along and do a bit of snorkeling with the fish or diving with the fish, whatever it is. It'd be one off my bucket list.
Yeah, no, we'll do that, definitely. I'm well up for that. But yeah, take care, buddy.
Cracking, Jack. Thank you very much.